Hey guys, this is Sports with Dylan. If you watched my video that is currently uploading, I finished making it like 2 minutes ago and now it's uploading to YouTube, but by the time you see this, maybe it's been out for 20 minutes. Either way, if you watched my most recent video, the one on Mike Vrabel, I talked about how there's been a couple more surprises in the coaching world for the NFL. And I said I was going to split it into kind of two videos, all the news, because I figured I was going to talk about each for a long time. And I was right, the last video was like 9 minutes, and that was just one guy. This one is two guys. Kicking it off with the smaller and more expected firing of the day, and actually only firing of the day, you'll see what I mean in a moment. Luke Getsy, the Bears' offensive coordinator, was fired. This one isn't that much of a shocker. Even though I love what Justin Fields did this year, and DJ Moore was a star, it just wasn't enough. Someone was going to get fired after this Chicago season. It was going to be. It had to be. And given that Matt Eberflus, the head coach, was announced to be staying, then it had to be Luke Getsy. It's too bad, because honestly, I think Justin Fields and DJ Moore, like I said, played really well this year, but not quite well enough. Plus, the rest of the offense wasn't involved. Aside from DJ Moore, none of the other receivers, and tight end Cole Kmet was quite good as well, but none of the other receivers were that good. And the running game sucked this year. And Justin Fields just did not have the development some people were hoping for, even though I still think he looked really good. It's too bad, though, because after what Luke Getsy did with Aaron Rodgers as his quarterback coach in Green Bay, I thought Luke Getsy was going to be a star and make Justin Fields into one as well. But it just didn't work out. And who knows, maybe Luke Getsy will find a new destination and he will turn back into a superstar coach. We'll have to see, but Chicago just wasn't that place. And now we'll see a new face on this offense. And hopefully, if Justin Fields ends up being the quarterback of the future, which I think he should be, then he helps Justin Fields develop even further. And now on to the second piece of news for the day. Pete Carroll, the longtime Seattle Seahawks head coach. I'm getting a phone call. Oh, never mind. Not a phone call. Just a notification. Pete Carroll, the longtime Seattle Seahawks head coach who won them a Super Bowl, brought them to another, is retiring. He is going to stay with the organization in an advisory role, but he will no longer be the head coach. This one is a bit surprising. On the one hand, the Seahawks have always fielded a very competitive team, including this year, when they were competitive. They were close. They just missed the mark by a bit. But, on the other hand, Pete Carroll is 72. That's a bit old for an NFL head coach. And based on how much money he's made, I'd want to retire at that age. And besides, the Seahawks aren't getting any better, is the thing. They're slowly going to get worse. Sure, they have a pretty good roster, but they're not going to win another Super Bowl anytime soon. Geno Smith is not the guy to bring them to a Super Bowl. He can be the guy to bring them to playoffs sometimes, sure. But he's never going to be your Super Bowl winning quarterback. And Pete Carroll knows this. Hence why Pete Carroll has decided to step away. He can let this be someone else's problem, what to do next. Do they tear it down and rebuild up from the ground with a new young starting quarterback? Or do you just retool and try and compete for the playoffs with Geno for a couple more years until you need to find a new quarterback? Regardless, it's going to involve needing a new quarterback, so we'll have to see what happens there. But it was a nice way for Pete Carroll to go out. I'll say that. Because after all he did for the team, it's nice that he wasn't fired or anything. And honestly, I wish this is how Bill Belichick could go out. The team finished pretty well. They finished with a winning record, 9-8. They made the playoffs last season. They've been playing well. So sure, they didn't make the playoffs. Sure, they weren't the best team in the league. But they were still a good team. Pete Carroll can go out as a good head coach, someone who always fielded a very competitive and good team. Even if they missed the mark by a bit in their final season with him as the head coach, his legacy can still last. And it's kind of sad while Bill Belichick, obviously, is still the head coach, and this could still happen. But if he were to leave this offseason, it just wouldn't be the same. Now, I don't think he'd be fired, like I've been through multiple times. Just like Pete Carroll wasn't, even though there are talks about him being fired. When a coach has done this much for an organization, they part ways. You never fire them. Or sometimes, the coach will step down as head coach, but stay in an advisory role, such as Pete Carroll. While I can't see Bill Belichick quite doing that, it is too bad that he can't close it off with a good season. A season to prove that he was the greatest head coach of all time, and he will keep it that way. Obviously, he still was. But it's kind of a sad way if you were to go out here with a 4-13 record. Anyways, back to the Seahawks. The Seahawks will now be on the hunt for a new head coach this offseason. And immediately, the first guy that came to mind for me was Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn was one of my top head coaching candidates this offseason, and the offseason before, and the offseason before. Dan Quinn, I think, is an amazing defensive coordinator, and I think he deserves another shot to be head coach. Even when he was head coach in Atlanta, he did lead them to a Super Bowl. So, it's not like it was all bad. He didn't fail out of the gate. Sure, it got bad eventually, but he was a good coach in Atlanta for quite a while as well. Now, the connection here that I think would make this really cool is that Dan Quinn was the coach of the Legion of Boom. He was their defensive coordinator when they won that Super Bowl, until he ended up leaving and getting hired in Atlanta. So, I think it would be pretty cool if he came back to be the head coach this time around. Now, he wouldn't really know any of the players anymore, except Bobby Wagner, who's still on that team. But it would still be cool. He still obviously knows the ownership and the management, so it would be nice to see the two sides reunite. Now, it is possible as well that they just promote a current coach. Now, I can't see them promoting defensive coordinator Clint Hurtt. That just, I don't know. The defense didn't quite perform up to expectations this year, so I don't think he's in contention. Shane Waldron, the offensive coordinator, is a possibility, and he has been mentioned as a possible head coach candidate for other teams. But I don't quite see that one either. The offense was fine, but it struggled at times. It was never amazing. And I can't even blame that all on Geno Smith, who I don't think is a great quarterback, just fine. DK Metcalf wasn't getting enough targets and didn't have a season we were looking for. Tyler Lockett didn't have the season we were looking for. Jackson Smith-Njigba didn't have the season we were looking for. Those are all wide receivers. Kenneth Walker actually had a really good season, but the rest of the Zach Charbonnet, the rookie second rounder, just didn't either. So, I think it's the fact that the Seahawks offense hasn't quite been good enough. I don't think Shane Waldron quite deserves a head coaching job. But we'll have to see what ends up happening. Like I said, Dan Quinn gets my vote as a Seahawks fan. I think Dan Quinn should become the next head coach. But we will have to see what ends up happening. Maybe they'll hire someone completely different and out of the blue. Or maybe they'll just promote Shane Waldron. We'll have to see. But for now, thank you guys for watching. And I will see you guys again soon.